Welcome to You and Your Democracy. It's a short take civics lesson as part of our program, Where Do We Go From Here? I'm Chuck Parkinson. Each episode, we will look at the head and heart of democracy. We will explore the values and the principles that have created our American exceptionalism and examine the structures and institutions that give us the guardrails of our democratic republic. To quote Benjamin Franklin when asked in 1787 after the Constitutional Convention, "Doctor, what have we got, a republic or monarchy?" To which Franklin responded with a rejoinder at once witty and ominous, "A republic if you can keep it." So now let's take a look at what is this great American experiment, and then ask, what do we need to do to keep it? In this episode, we will be discussing the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. I am pleased to be joined by Dorothy "Rowdy" Brewick, retired Rapid City Area School District Social Studies teacher. Thank you for joining us today, Rowdy.
Thank you for asking me. I love coming.
Great. Well, let's just jump right into it. The preamble of the Constitution. It is 52 words. And let's just start the discussion. What is the preamble? And what
All right. Well, the story sort of starts with 1776 and Thomas Jefferson and the gang's idea that we should be free. And so with the stroke of the pen, he wrote the Declaration of Independence and created the United States of America. And we didn't have a government. And so in 1781, the states came together and wrote what was called the Articles of Confederation, which didn't work. About the only thing it was good for, it did allow us to conduct a Treaty of Paris that ended the Revolutionary War. So in 1787, the powers that be said, we have got to do something about what's happening in this country. And that's a story for another time, how everything was falling apart. So they called a convention. They called one and not enough came. So they called the second one in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the State House. And 55 delegates showed up. 12 states were represented. And Rhode Island didn't come, and it doesn't participate in this at all. Anyway, and they were supposed to fix the Articles of Confederation, but of course, when they reviewed them and looked at all the problems, they thought, there's no way that we can do this. And so they said, we have got to have a new form of government. And at that time, then really their job should have been over. They should have gone home. But instead of going home, they put black curtains on the windows. They put dirt on the cobblestones so that they wouldn't be interfered with the noise of the horses. And they rolled up their sleeves. And their first discussion was, what are our common beliefs? And what happened was those common beliefs, which I can talk about, coalesced into one single 52-word sentence that is a statement of what our plan of government is all about, and that is called the preamble.
That's an amazing thing. And I don't know if many people have been to Philadelphia in the middle of the summertime, but it is miserably hot and humid there. And for them to, because some people may not, think air conditioning is wonderful, but when the windows are closed up and everything else going on, how very, very committed they were to coming up with this new form of
government. I know I used to tell my students about that. They all just held their nose. They could almost envision what that room, the environment was like. But they did, as you said, they were loyal patriots, and they hung in there, and they decided this is what they needed to do, and they stayed there. Some kind of came and went because of personal obligations and stuff, but for the most part, they stayed there and wrote this plan of government based on the preamble.
Let's talk a little bit about the basics of that preamble.
Okay. Well, I used to talk about it as the 3 C's. And I said that the founding fathers or the framers could see, almost into the future and what was going to be needed to put those. And so their basic common beliefs that they all agreed to was, one, that government is a compact of people coming together for the common good. That was the first C. So they formed a compact. The second one is that this government will derive its authority from the consent of those governed. So that was the second C. So we have a compact that has gotten the consent of the governed. And the third one is there are three basic fundamental laws or principles of nature that cannot be taken away. And of course, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was included in the Declaration of Independence. And then a fourth, of course, because of the problems, it was the right to own property. And so taking those core beliefs, giving the people the consent to agree to this plan, and making this plan a compact of people for the common good, they could write a government, a new plan.
I think that's an important point, the common good. People sometimes don't think about that from that standpoint as we go forward, and which is really is the heart of this matter, I would think.
Yes, yes, yes. And it still is the heart of this matter. And so it was a statement of purpose, and it provided a framework, and it was enough of a structure so that there were corners, it contained. But through their wisdom, they also allowed growth and expansion within that framework, as long as you kept referring back to the preamble or that statement of purpose. And when I taught this, I was a mnemonic nut. And, and so I always tried to assist my kids in putting things in an order where they then could expand its meaning, so they could put their own personality and selves into essay questions and anytime organize their thoughts, I guess. So it was FEEPS. It seemed like, and I'm sure maybe there's one or two kids out there, they're not kids now, but adults that go, FEEPS, I've heard of FEEPS. Mrs. Brewick and her FEEPS. But so the preamble, this one sentence, begins with "we the people," and there you go. There is a compact giving consent. So those first words reflected the common belief that it was going to always be the people that formed this government. And then in order to form a more perfect union. So form a more perfect union, F is the form, and of course better than the Articles of Confederation. Something that all the states would agree to. Something where they would, so it was that national government, that federal government, the union. And union, like the United States of America started out as common nouns, and then eventually evolved into the name of our country. The United States or the USA. And so a better place for people in the USA to live. And because of so many of the disputes, the E, of course, is established justice. And there was no top level or federal judicial system. The courts some were state, some were local, magistrate, all kinds of courts, but there was no umbrella court. There was really no way to ensure justice for all, and words like due process and those ideas came later. But the idea was to establish some kind of justice system to make sure that people were treated fairly. So anytime someone questions the justice system and the power that the Supreme Court has, all they have to do is go back to the preamble. And of course, was the idea, was that eventually there would be, a law that would interpret this.
I think that's one of the things that's very important for our viewers and listeners to really focus on is the fact is that the Constitution was built out. It always came back specifically to the points that you just talked about that are the integral parts of the preamble.
Yeah. So then the third one is the I, and it is the one that is very timely today, and that is ensure domestic tranquility. And domestic always refers to the home, and their intention was to refer to peace at home, in your house, peace in your hometown or your local world, and peace in your home country. So within, and this has been, probably one of the most maybe widely interpreted and maybe disputed over. Controversy, there's another one coming that's probably shares the title, but ensure domestic tranquility. It was to make sure that the country would run smoothly. And so there was peaceful protests, and they're legal, and they're within the framework of the Constitution. But then there were riots that went outside of that needed to be controlled to provide safety for people within that particular space. And so, the controversy that we're having over, well, even, wearing face masks. Well, to ensure domestic tranquility, peace here at home, Walmart has got to figure out how to put that order in place and not adversely affect, put anyone in danger, like their workers who are, so that's ensure domestic tranquility. But another really important one that I know some people fear today is the peaceful succession, handing the government over from one leader or one party or one element to the next. And we have the 25th Amendment. We have that outlined, how we peacefully succeed one administration to the next. And that's ensuring domestic tranquility.
That goes to the point. As we run our time down, and we could talk, like I could have this conversation for all day, but this will be for another time in the future. We can follow up on some of these things we've touched on today. As we leave this episode, any final thoughts that you might have?
Well, yes, there are two more things, of course, I wanted to address, but I think probably my final thought is that this is probably the wisest, probably most important single sentence ever written in the whole world pertaining to the purpose of a government.
That's very well put. And I think that's really food for thought at that particular point in the time for all of us to take a look back at that preamble and read through it, because it is the basis for whom we are. That's our episode for now. I want to thank Rowdy Brewick for sharing her expertise and thoughts with us today. And as always, our executive producer, Suzanne Stratford, and the SDPB technical staff for their creativity and hard work on this program. Thank you also to the supporters of South Dakota Public Broadcasting who make this program possible. To view previous episodes in this series, go to sdpb.org/election. If you have comments or suggestions for future episodes, send us a note at programming@sdpb.org. Until our next short take, I'm Chuck Parkinson.